Welcome to today's virtual community forum. Here's Colin Tiernan.
Hello. This is the second of what will be 4 debates with Spokane Valley City Council candidates. We're just here to talk with the candidates and ask them some questions about important Spokane Valley issues to give voters a better sense of what they're about. I'm joined today by Pam Haley, who is an incumbent. She is running to retain her seat on Spokane Valley City Council. Her opponent, Wayne Fenton, did not respond to our invitations to join Pam in this debate today. Pam, because you are solo today, there is no need for me to do a coin flip to determine who goes first. So to start things off, you have 90 seconds to make an opening statement.
Well, hi, first of all, thank you for continuing with this, even though the candidate running against me isn't there. Everything else has been canceled because of that. So I really appreciate you guys taking the time to do this. Yeah, I'm Pam Haley. I am running to retain my seat on the City of Spokane Valley Council. I've been there about 6 years. I think that the important things to me are public safety, the roads, and infrastructure, but in particular right now also homelessness.
Gotcha. So Pam, the first question that I have for you is about housing. As many people know, both in Spokane and Spokane Valley right now, housing prices are skyrocketing, rental prices are skyrocketing. It's really hard for people to find a place to live in many cases. What do you think Spokane Valley can do at the local level to address the housing shortage?
It's going to take quite a bit at the local level because we have been in a housing crisis for years. It's just come to a head now. I think that one of the things I'm hoping we're able to do, and we're still waiting for direction to see if we'll be able to use the COVID funding for starting, say, low-income housing and partnering with one of the builders to try to build some more as quickly as we can. Other than that, we're looking at our rules and regulations and trying to see where we can make it easier for people to build, especially single-family homes. That seems to be really tough to get anybody to build right now. And of course, we're also looking at how we can infill a bit more. We're still the Valley and we're going to always be the Valley. So it's not going to be infill like you see in the city, but we do have some open spaces that could be used for apartments.
Gotcha. One thing that I should note is that for the debates where we have both candidates, we are giving individuals 60 seconds to respond to a question, but because Pam is alone today, we're giving her 90 seconds. Pam, the second question I have for you is about parks and trails. So in the past couple of years, the Valley has made several major land purchases with the intent of expanding the city's parks and trails system. The two most notable are probably the approximately 40 acres that the city bought along the Spokane River south of the Flora and Euclid intersection, and then approximately 17 acres in the Ponderosa neighborhood. Where do you stand on the city's land purchases for parks and trails expansion?
Well, I think that our timing was pretty bad. So the property you're referring to on Flora was actually owned by WashDOT, who had told us that we would get first right of refusal no matter what. The cost was going to stay the same. It wasn't going to go up if we wanted to purchase it at a later date. So in the middle of COVID, when we really didn't know where the money was going to come from for sure, we purchased that property, which I think was a mistake at that time because we weren't going to lose it. It wasn't like there was no rush to purchase it, but we purchased it anyway. Now we're going to our citizens and asking for money for road preservation. And I feel like we should be handling some of those practical, maybe not quite so fun things first, like roads, infrastructure, public safety. Those are what the city does. And I feel like we didn't need to spend that money at that particular point.
Gotcha. Thank you. The next question for you, Pam, is we are still in the middle of a pandemic, and there have been a lot of challenges with the pandemic, obviously. How do you feel about the mask mandates and vaccine mandates imposed by Governor Jay Inslee?
Well, actually, I run a daycare center, so we have already fallen under that mandate. Everyone who works for me has to have already had both shots in order to be able to work here after October. How do I feel about it? I'm not sure. I've had 3 people quit. That's 10% of my workforce down here. Rather than get the vaccine, I'm not sure. We already have a shortage of employees. It is hard to hire people. People don't. I mean, we put ads in the paper and we used to get 30, 40 people for one position. Now I don't get any. And if I do get anybody, they don't show up for the interview. So I don't know. It's a tough place to be. There are people who just sincerely do not believe they should have to take the vaccine, and they're choosing to leave professions that require it.
Thank you. Next one for you, Pam. Last fall, the Spokane Board of Health fired Dr. Bob Lutz, the man who had been leading the health district's response to the pandemic. Do you agree with the board's decision to fire Dr. Lutz?
So I wasn't on the board, so I don't really know all of the reasons that they did it. Regardless of whether it was something that should have been done or not, I think it was done very poorly. I think in the middle of a pandemic is probably the wrong time to fire the head of our health department. But like I said, I'm not privy to what actually went on, so I don't know. But I do think it was handled very poorly. The press conference after he was fired was a disaster.
Thank you. One of the issues that comes up at Spokane Valley City Council meetings most often, one of the issues the City Council is spending the most time working on is homelessness. Today, people experiencing homelessness in Spokane Valley, for the most part, have to travel to Spokane if they're looking for a shelter bed and a variety of other services that simply don't exist in the valley. Do you think there should be a homeless shelter in Spokane Valley city limits?
So I'm not opposed to a homeless shelter within the city limits. I think that they can't be a no barrier though, because I feel like we've tried that, and you look at the city of Spokane who has multiple no barrier shelters and it's not helping. I think that may be the case where if you build it, they will come. So I would like there to be some parameters. I think some people, particularly those who are remaining homeless in the valley, have stated that they're afraid to come into the city and stay in a shelter because there's drugs and alcohol and weapons, and they're trying to get off drugs and alcohol. So going to where it's easily accessible is scary to them. And then also they've said that when they stayed in the shelter, all their belongings were stolen, and so then they had nothing. So I think we need to make something that's safe for everybody, not someplace that they're afraid to go because they're afraid they'll be hurt or be given drugs or anything like that. So I think we need to set some parameters. You know, we're a contract city, so we would probably contract with somebody, I'm assuming possibly Valley Partners, who does most of our homeless services now. And then in the hopes that we would be able to maybe get these people permanently housed, not staying in homeless shelters.
Thank you. Next one for you, Pam, is about growth. So it's no surprise to anybody that Spokane Valley is growing, and it has been for a long time. I'm relatively new here, but when I talk with folks who have lived in Spokane Valley a long time, they'll sometimes lament the loss of farmland, loss of open space. They'll talk about how a lot of the things that made the valley what it was back then are being lost. Some people use the phrase urban sprawl. What do you think Spokane Valley should do that it can do on the local level to manage growth?
So change is hard. I actually lived in Spokane Valley when there was a dairy farm and lots of open spaces and orchards and things like that. Part of the problem is, good or bad, I think it's probably good, but there's private property rights. People have the right to sell their land, and as long as the zoning is okay. And then we have the state who is now mandating certain things. They're mandating that we reduce the lot size. They're mandating many, many things. I'm assuming that will probably make it to court because I'm hoping it's not legal for the state to mandate what we do. But there's a lot of things that are being mandated that we aren't going to have some, control over. First, homeless shelters for one. The state passed a law that said that you can put a homeless shelter anywhere. So we currently have a moratorium on that, where we look at our zoning and try to determine what size would fit best where and what we can do to make that happen. But those state mandates have some unintended consequences that come with it.
Thank you. For several years now, Spokane Valley has been using money that it collects through a telephone tax to pay for road maintenance. And ever since the city established that tax, it has brought in less money every single year. City staff say that the valley needs to double its spending on road maintenance in order to ensure that roads don't fall into disrepair. And by double, that's from $8 million to $16 million a year. How do you think the city should pay for future road maintenance?
Well, the reality is we aren't spending 8 right now. We're spending closer to 4. Originally, the staff told us it would be 8 in order to continue keeping our roads good. Now, suddenly it's gone to 16. So I'm curious if the numbers are correct, first of all, just because they change dramatically from moment to moment. I think that we have extra money right now in our budget, and I think we need to use that money before we go to our citizens for more. This is a really hard time for people. Property taxes have skyrocketed because values have gone up. School bonds have taken a big chunk of money away from people, and the discussion they're having is on a utility tax. I've gotten calls from citizens who are retired, who have their homes paid off, and they really thought that they had everything set. But with the cost of everything going up, now they're concerned they're going to be able to stay in their home. And there's no place for them to move that's any cheaper anyway, because the cost of everything is so high now. So I just don't want to put that hardship on our citizens right now when we have the extra money and we can just use that money to do it.
Thank you. Next question for you, Pam, is about police. So Spokane Valley, as you already mentioned, is a contract city. And what that means in practice is that instead of having lots of full-time city employees, the city often pays private companies or governmental entities to perform many of the services that the city needs. For law enforcement, the city contracts with the Spokane County Sheriff's Office. Right now, like many law enforcement agencies throughout the country, the Sheriff's Office is understaffed, having difficulty hiring. Do you think the Spokane Valley should continue contracting with the Sheriff's Office for law enforcement? Do you think it's time for the city to once again consider forming its own police department?
At this point in time, I think we should stay with the Sheriff's Department. There's a huge cost in setting up your own, as you know. They're doing a good job. They're doing the best they can with the staff they have. I'm really proud of our Sheriff's Department and what they're able to accomplish when there's such a shortage of people who want to become police officers right now. And it is true, it's a nationwide issue. And my concern too is if we were to start a police department now, where would we find the staff to even man it? The people that are there now are experienced and they know the valley, and I think that for now, I mean, if we get bigger, we may have to. It may just be a reality, but for now, I am very positive about our relationship with the Sheriff's Department.
Thank you. And because we are going so fast, because it's just you, I'm actually going to go off my script here and ask you a question about daycares, because I know that there's been a lot of talk nationally about sort of a crisis with childcare, because it's so expensive for parents to pay to put their kids in daycares, and it's really hard for daycare operators to find staff these days. Maybe there's nothing the city can do at a local level, but I was curious your thoughts on if there's anything Spokane Valley can do to improve childcare in Spokane Valley.
Yes, I think there is. I think that another use for the CARES money, and I'm downtown Spokane, so I wouldn't benefit, so I can say this. I think that possibly offering COVID money, the CARES money, to allow people to give sign-on bonuses to new employees. If they're there for so many months, they get, X number of dollars when they start, X number of dollars maybe 3 months later. The child care centers really got hit. You hear about the restaurants and things like that, but when everybody was home, we didn't have that many kids. Well, now we have a lot of kids, but now we don't have any staff. So there's not a shortage of space for kids. There's a shortage of staff members to take care of those children. So anything that the city can do to help child care centers hire more staff would really help with our shortage that we're having. The other issue, of course, is the state of Washington and every state that regulates childcare often puts things into effect that impact us cost-wise, but don't actually impact the children at all. They've recently done things like we have to test our water every 2 years to see if there's any lead in it. Things like that add cost that really aren't a huge benefit because the water districts all test their water as well. So if we tested our water once, you would think then we know our pipes are okay and the public would be safe. So I don't know. There's just a lot of little things like that add up. It may only be $300 a year to do it, but those 300s add up. And that's another problem. So all those costs have to get passed on to people too, the people who we care for their children. And that's one of the reasons that the cost goes up. Another reason is that minimum wage goes up. That's another one that we have trouble with. And it's not because I wasn't already paying more than minimum wage to all my staff, because I was. But when you start seeing minimum wage go as high as it's going, then in order to pay them above minimum wage, much gets a little more difficult because your trainee is making more than what you used to pay them. And there should be an ability to train somebody at the minimum wage we used to have, and then move them up as they become more able to do their job.
Thank you. The last two questions I have for you, Pam, are sort of a yin and a yang. What is a decision that City Council has made in the past year that you are especially in favor of?
I think that one of the things that we did very well was to get the CARES money out quickly to the people who needed it. I think that we picked the right people to do it. Again, we're a contract city, so we didn't have staff to do that. So we found Valley Partners and SNAP and people to get the money out. And we got the money out quicker than any other city in our area to the people who needed it the most. And I think that was very positive.
Gotcha. And then what is a decision that City Council has made in the last year that you were especially opposed to?
I was opposed to, there's a couple of things I was opposed to. As I said before, I was opposed to the floral property purchase. I just felt the timing was bad. It was a lot of money when we're saying we don't have money for roads to spend on a park. The other thing that I was opposed to that actually ended up passing, but there were people against it, was the idea that we have to come up with a separate funding stream to do road maintenance, when I think we should look at our budget and the overages we're having and decide truly how much more we need to do road maintenance.
Thank you. All right, well, Pam, those are the questions that we had for you. Thank you very much for joining us today and participating in this debate. The only thing I have for you now is you have a chance to make a closing statement, and I suppose, should remind voters that the general election will be on November 2nd. So yes, actually, you can make a closing statement.
Okay, thank you. Yeah, actually, the ballots will drop October 15th, so that's coming quicker than we think. I think it's important to get your ballot in, no matter who you vote for. We had such a low turnout in the primary that I'm not sure the citizens' views are being actually, continued on. Who knows? But I would appreciate your vote. You can check my voting record. I have always voted for the City of Spokane Valley people, and I will continue to do that. Thank you, and thank you very much for doing this with me. I appreciate it.
Well, yeah, again, thank you very much for joining us, and I think that's all we have for today.
Thank you.